Welcome back to Atelier 1121. I'm your host, Ontavia Roulette, and today's guest is Kelvin Bulluck, an extremely talented photographer and a friend of mine who has worked in so many places, been in so many rooms, and has experienced a great deal of personal growth and connectivity to source that he would like to share with you today. And also, we're going to dive deep into the duality of beauty and ugly. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the episode. So first, before we even get started, how are you today? You feeling good? Feeling
Yeah,
great?
yeah. I actually, once a month I like to go and do these float sessions. Basically, it's a sensory deprivation chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And have you heard of this before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and this is not like one of those cutesy like lit up and it's music playing. Like, no, you are in complete darkness with earplugs in, and you're like floating, and it's really just about you. Like, I call it a hard reset. So each month I do it, and it's just like no stimuli. It's just me and my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very rejuvenating. It almost feels like a rebirth every time I open up that door and the light floods my eyesight, and it
Mm-hmm.
just feels like a reawakening, if you will. So
So what made you start doing that?
I listened to it was this podcast that I was listening to, and they were talking about it and just talking about some of the benefits, as far as stress reduction. um Also, it's like I can't even think of all of them right now, but just a lot of benefits of doing it. And I've experienced like I feel like a different person since I've been doing it, and I've been doing it for about a year and 3 months now. So like once a month, I've been like consistently doing it, and
Is it
it's just
salt water?
yeah. It's a saltwater solution. So you're like, that's what allows you to float, since it's so salty.
Yeah. So like what benefits have you seen? Like obvious benefits.
Uh, well, kind of a one kind of vain, um, I guess, benefit is my skin. Like, for whatever reason, like it just feels smoother
Mm-hmm.
because of it. I don't know what it is about the salt water. You would think it would be like the opposite, but like every time I get up out of there, I just feel silky smooth. And then on top of that, like I don't know. Again, it's just like a hard reset. We're so overstimulated in this day and age with all of the lights, the sounds, the blue light from the phone.
Right.
Like all of these things are impacting us in ways that we're not even really clocking. And once you actually stop doing those things for a certain period of time, that's when you actually realize that, oh wow, I've been kind of like poisoning myself this whole time. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and it just the that's also just another benefit, is it just allows me to do that reset and to give my mind and my ears and my sense of touch, like all those things, get to just have a break. Oh, also it's good for the back as well. Like, since you're taking all of that weight off of your body, and it's just floating, it's good for back pain relief as well. So how you
Well,
been?
I'm good. I have always been a very secluded individual, very quiet and under the radar. I'm happy. It's a different kind of happy.
You sound like it.
I feel happy. I feel healthy. I feel peaceful. Before, like, not counting the CFDA, I'm talking about like when I saw you at, I think the last time before that was like my runway show.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'm saying that yeah, I'm a completely different person. I've grown immensely. My I hate to say self-love has like overwhelmed me to a point where like I feel unshakable. Understanding of my self-worth, my self-love, my existence, how it's like reconnecting to that feeling I had as a child where not so much I don't have any worries, but I know I'm okay.
So you said something interesting. You said, I hate to say it. What did you mean by that? Like, you hate to say that your self love has um over, I don't know the word to use, but you did say you hated to say it, but why would you hate to say that? Like self-love is an amazing thing, man.
Some people hate to hear it.
Oh,
Some people won't like to hear that, So, and everyone has those people in their lives, Not I don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
call
no,
them
for sure.
ops. But it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, we're gonna get into this here in a minute, I guess, when we start the actual interview. But
Yes.
I'm gonna be talking a lot about that because I've been in this season myself, and I can totally relate to what you're talking about. But I'll save some of that for the actual conversation. Although I feel like this what we've already been
No,
talking about could
we've
be
already
included.
started.
Oh
Yeah.
shoot, we live. Okay, hold on. Let
Yeah.
me. Cool. Well, no, well, yeah. Let's. I guess let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's-
Let's get into the question so you understand where you're going. But if you could please introduce yourself to our guest.
Yes, my name is Kelvin Bulluck. I am a portrait photographer. I'm based in the DMV area, but I travel all over for work. So I'm in New York quite often. I'm in LA. I've been doing a little bit more work in Atlanta, Miami, just wherever the work is. That's where I tend to be. I specialize in fashion and editorial, as well as beauty photography. I also do commercial photography as well. So that is who I am. That is what I do. Actually, let me rephrase that. That's not actually who I am. It is what I do. Who I am is a bit more complex than that. But we can tap into that aspect of life, a little later into the conversation.
No,
But
let's
just
go
as
right now. Shoot, we here. Why don't we let's not be indecisive. Let's be right on top of it. Who
okay,
I
okay,
am. I mean, coming out of this 2020 and even up until 2023, like people are realizing like I am not my job, I am not my clothes, I am not my career, I am not my car. And
facts.
I think we all attached ourselves to those things and boxed ourselves into those things to have self-worth. So yeah, who are you?
Well, I want to touch on something that you just said, and it is spot on, about the revelations that people had when we had to sit down and be in our houses for a period of time because of the global pandemic and the lockdown, the shutdown. That was an eye-opening experience for not only the world but myself specifically, because I had to, at that point, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working just like everybody else. I was in the house. I was with my thoughts. I was with my wife and our grandnephew, who we were the caretakers and guardians of at the time, and it was just us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because you didn't have those distractions to keep your mind preoccupied. I think in that time of uncertainty and not knowing, like, yo, is the world ever gonna get back to what it was? When what does the future look like? What am I gonna do if business doesn't pick back up? Like, who am I aside from being a photographer? Because up until that point, I had taken a lot of pride
Yeah,
in
as you
being.
should.
Yeah, it's like when you learn a craft and you take it to heart and you work at it and you build a name, uh and then it's like, oh well, I'm not able to do that. Like, who am I after that? So I was faced with those questions, and honestly, I guess I had been asking myself that question for some time, but kind of like in the back of my head, like, I really am more than just a shooter. Like, there is
Yeah.
more to me than just this thing. But I never really took the time to figure out what that looked like for me, or who I am when I put this thing down. And honestly, through this journey of working through the pandemic, and then I eventually ended up getting a therapist who I've been seeing for like a year plus now. And really, we were talking about earlier self-care and how some people don't really like, to talk, or they don't really like the concept of it, or they feel like it's one of those buzzwords that's just overused. But for
Yeah.
me, it it truly was an awakening that really stirred some things up. And you know what? I could actually pinpoint it. I can take it back to um this book that I ended up reading, which was more of like a workbook because I had things that I was supposed to do. It wasn't really just about reading the chapters of the book. It was actually doing the things that they were listing out. And it was this book titled The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And in this book, it was really getting the individual to tap in to their true nature, the things that they were drawn to even as a child, and like kind of looking back and thinking about like before we had all of these pressures thrown upon us, and all of these expectations from other people, whether it be our parents or teachers or friends or family or whoever.
Hmm.
Before all of that, we had certain leanings towards certain things, certain proclivities, certain interests that just came natural to us. And
Yeah.
in this book, Julia Cameron lays out some exercises that help you tap back into those natural interests. And two main exercises helped with that. The first exercise was something that you had to do every day for I forget, I think it was like 6 or 9 weeks. I can't remember the length of time, but every morning you had to get up and write 3 pages of what is called morning pages. And so in the morning pages, what you're doing is you get up, you have your journal, and you basically are writing stream of conscious, like things that are coming to your mind in that moment. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what it is. You could be writing, I hate doing morning pages. This is so boring. Why do I even have to do that? And you keep writing until you get to 3 pages. And ultimately, what ends up happening is some inner truths start to peek their head above the surface of that subconscious level, and you start to really see.
Like where you are in your mind and ask yourself if
Yes,
you are, am I okay?
yes,
Yeah, no,
yes,
I had that experience. I understand. Like when you put those words down on paper in the sunlight and you have to look at it, it's like
yes.
looking in a mirror. But instead of looking at your face, you're looking at your brain.
That is a beautiful way to put it, because that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, your boy was shook. Your boy,
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, what?
I
In
consider burning my journal that I noted down, and that stream of consciousness and openness and just transparency. I consider burning it all the time because I'm so concerned about someone seeing it one day. And I
Listen,
was
I
like,
had to I had to lock mine up. My wife was mad. She was like, "Why are you hiding this from me?" I'm like, "Listen,
some
I
things
can't."
aren't for you.
Yes, I know you got my last name and I put the ring on it, but it's just certain things.
Yeah.
You don't want these thoughts. You don't
This
want
is the
these thoughts.
shadow book before the shadow book came out, bro. Like,
It, so did you? Let me ask you this: Did you? So are you familiar with the artist way? Did you, or this was just some other practice that you were already involved in? Like
this is a personal practice that I've been involved in that was offered to me when I was in art school.
Mm,
My teachers were very intrigued by me and they really encouraged it, but I never did it. And of course, when we were all locked in, uh, I said, "Why not? You're living by yourself. There's no one here but you and your dogs. The worst that can happen is a burglar takes the journal and he will decide he will never come back." You know,
y-
this was something I was introduced to very, very young.
yeah, and it's funny when you think about somebody coming across it or reading it. I honestly, when I would write, I would keep it 100, but I would also have in the back of my mind, somebody's gonna read this one day. Like I might be
Yeah.
dead and gone, and somebody will read this, but I'm like, I can't hide from my truths anymore, and I grew up being a people pleaser and,
Hmm.
just trying to go along to get along.
It seems like
And
most artists do, though, right?
yeah, like, and I don't know what it is,
It
but
almost seems like you have to be a people pleaser to fall in love with humanity in order to see humanity
mm,
for what it is, to then fall in love with
ooh,
yourself.
you speaking truth now. You speaking truth. You getting deep on me early in this thing. Hold on.
No, we do this through the whole thing. We do this through the
Yes,
whole thing.
yes. But that's exactly, that's exactly how I felt about it. Like I'm like, this is real and I can't hide this anymore. And when I tell you shit got rocky, man, like
Yeah.
after like facing that mirror of my brain, as you put it, I had to I, I mean, I had to come clean with some things, man, and I had to. I think that was one of the things that helped me even realize, like, you know what, I should get, an individual counselor, somebody to
Yeah.
help me process these thoughts in a way that would lend themselves or lend the thought processes to evolution, a self evolution.
Hmm.
And I also saw the opportunity to then take this evolved self and then pour it back into anything that I was creating, no matter what avenue of creation I chose, whether it
But
was
isn't that the tool? Isn't that our job as artists to take everything we learn and mold it and translate it in order to create a dialogue in art?
that is exactly right. But the thing is, for the longest time as a photographer, I I would create the things that I wanted to create or the things that I was drawn to or the subject matter that I was drawn to. I would I would focus in on that, but I wouldn't necessarily ask why. I wouldn't explore more deeply some of the underlying issues that I was really tackling but didn't understand at the time that that's what I was doing. And so I was almost asleep in my creative process, if
Yes,
you
that's my
will.
next question. Do you see a difference in your work compared to now than
Yes.
before? Before you had that therapy, before you did the journaling, before you
Yes.
did the work, and what is that difference if you can pinpoint it and put words to it?
Listen. We, we okay. Yeah, okay. I like where you headed with this because this is. I hope you're sitting down. I hope you got some coffee. We might be here for a minute. This is going to be a therapy session. So anyway, um, I'll start with saying that in the beginning, a lot of even my personal projects that I would do with my photography were centered around the concept of beauty
Hmm.
and what that looked like to me. And I found myself like in the beginning, of the very first personal project that I did, um, it was about black women and the way that they wore their natural hair. So it was like a natural hair portrait series. And I ended up going, I was from the East Coast to the West Coast to London and Toronto. Like I went to all of these places and I was photographing uh women from all different types of backgrounds, not models, just like everyday women who wore their hair naturally,
Hmm.
and that was like an amazing experience. I got to expand my network. I got to grow in my craft, um, and I got to create some beautiful images. But I still wasn't tapping into what it was that I was really the concept that I was playing with. I had a surface level understanding. Then the
Beauty.
next, yes, of
Okay.
beauty. And then after that project concluded, a few years later, I ended up doing another series of portraits, and this series was called Face Naked. And in this series, again, I was photographing. And for this series specifically, I was photographing any and everybody who was willing to get in front of my camera, any female identifying person, um, get in front of my camera without makeup on. And that was an interesting process because, certain people aren't, people ain't always excited to be having their,
Unfiltered.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, unfiltered, exactly.
Yeah.
But I did that series for about 3 years, and I traveled all over, and I got to meet some interesting people, and I got to again create some beautiful images. But it was still, when I'm looking at it conceptually, was still on the surface level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward to, I start doing this journaling. I start really delving into my past experiences, my childhood, the traumas that came with that. I got into therapy, got even deeper. And one of the things that uh, became clear to me in that process is I was I was drawn to this idea of beauty for a number of reasons. For one, growing up I grew up in this town called Huntsville, Alabama. Um, my mom was in the army, and she was stationed at the army base that's there called Redstone Arsenal when she had me. So my mom and dad were there in Huntsville. They're from North Carolina originally, but they had myself and my youngest sister there, and my two older sisters were born in North Carolina. So Southern upbringing for the most part. But in that town of Huntsville at the time, um, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of us in the community that we found ourselves living in. And even when I was in elementary school and middle school and even into high school, um, the representation that we all know and love now of Black
Mm-hmm.
beauty and Black excellence,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't a thing. That
Yeah.
was not a thing. And
How recent is this? Come on now. Because
very, very recent. Very recent.
people act like this ain't new. This is
It,
very new.
exactly. And when I tell you, like, I growing up in that environment, I didn't see the beauty. I didn't see or recognize the beauty because it was shown to me and communicated to me in various ways that Black skin ain't it. That ain't
Yeah.
where it's at. And as a matter of fact, one of the status markers growing up at that time is, oh, especially in high school, you gotta get you a light skinned girl. You know what I'm
That
saying? You gotta
part.
get you a. I'm like, and I fell victim to that. I used to love me a little red bone, light skin, and it wasn't until college when I went to a predominantly white college, an undergrad, but I joined the Black Student Alliance, and I grew a healthy respect for the things that I didn't get fed in regards to you know
Being a
us.
product of your environment.
Exactly. And so I looking back on that, especially in some of the therapy sessions, I was going and trying to pinpoint or at least break down certain European standards of beauty
Mm-hmm.
um, that I was indoctrinated with growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at, okay, I did a series on natural hair, but I wanted to call to people's attention how beautiful this is. Like, not saying that people shouldn't be perming the hair, because at the end of the day, people can do whatever they want to, whatever makes them feel like they are expressing themselves in a way that makes them feel good or feel worthy. Like, I'm here for it, but I wanted to highlight um, another standard of beauty that I wasn't accustomed to seeing represented or celebrated
Mm-hmm.
as a child. So, and then even with the whole Face Naked project, again, it's the same idea of, let's challenge these beauty standards in a way that it's just a little more than we get fed all of these images of overly photoshopped individuals and full face, full beats, which again, all of these things have their place, and I'm not saying one way or the other that one is better than the other, but I'm like, let's look at this. Like, let's look at this. Let's explore.
And
And
why was it fed to us like this, force
ex-
fed to us to like this,
exactly.
and the impact that it caused on a people in general, and how it caused us to disconnect from ourselves, which then turns into us being ashamed of the things that we put in our journals.
Speak on it. Speak on it. That's what I'm talking about. That revelation of after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
having a better understanding of my own work. It's just I mean, that's just like a perfect example of what happens when you start digging a little bit deeper into yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and having an understanding of what you're, or why you're drawn to certain things. Are you familiar with Rick Rubin? Is a famous music producer. You know, he's worked with anybody that you can think of in the music game. You know, Jay-Z and I mean, the list. There's so many people that he's worked with. I'm not even gonna try to name all of them. But he recently put out a book called The Creative Act, and he talks about how we as creatives, and everybody is a creative in their own right, but when we're talking about us as artists, I can speak specifically to that. We are vessels of
Yeah.
the creative spirit, and we can't always choose when inspiration, let me not even say that, we can't choose when inspiration strikes. We can't choose the subject matter that we're ultimately drawn to. It's like these things kind of happen, and the
Yeah.
more that we can be in tune to the, I call it the creative spirit, the more truthful our work can be, even if we don't understand it in the moment that it's happening. It's almost not even for us to understand. It's for us to receive that signal and then use our minds and our faculties in order to push that creative idea into existence.
Yeah, we're
And
basically vessels. At the
yes,
end of the day, we're literally standing still, waiting for that phone call to come down from that invisible string connected from above to tell us, hey, do this. Because there's things that I do now that I would not have imagined that I would have been doing if you would have told me 5, 10 years ago. So yeah,
exactly. And hold
yeah,
on,
we're all
it sounds
just
like we've
a
been
tempo, by the
reading and
way.
listening to the same things here. That whole phone line situation, that analogy that you just used, that is spot on. Like, what are you what are you taking in? I'm curious. Like, it sounds like you are very evolved. So now I'm curious about some of the things that you're doing, and some of the things that you're reading or watching or listening to, that are helping shape your ideas of this creative process.
The creative process for me, and the things that I'm listening to, I listen to everything. Honestly, I'm not opposed to it because I know how I feel, and I'm not saying that I'm not open to being swayed, but I'm not opposed to listening to other people's opinions, taking bits and pieces of what I agree with and what I don't agree with, and adapting it into my life. Because the wrongest person in the world is going to be right at least once, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the worst artist in the world is going to make something good at least once. You just have to keep making stuff. I feel
Exactly.
like the things that man or human beings are receiving now because of the internet are things that have been here for a long time. We're just rediscovering it, and we're
Yep.
just remaking it, and we're just reprocessing it. We're all just living on a continuous creative loop, and we're all chasing this dream of, some of us, perfection, but everyone else is just looking for the connection.
Mm.
And for me, when I'm creating, I want someone to be like, I felt that too once, I experienced that once as well, I agree with that. It's almost like, as an artist, I'm just looking for the basic human right for connection. So when it comes to music, I'm listening to a lot of classical now again, but I still listen to my, Flo Milli, and I'm not opposed to Beyonce, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
also going to listen to Tyler, the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow I'm going to listen to Sheila E. I just there is no straight line for me. There is no one genre. There is no one book. I'm rereading Andre Leon Talley's memoir right now, um, for personal reasons and for a reminder. Um, I'm always reading, looking, listening to interviews, and yes, I am aware of the gentleman who he has his own podcast. You're talking about the older white gentleman, beard,
Yep,
white hair. Yeah,
that's him.
yeah, he's very famous, very creative, very in tune. I do like that intellectual. His name did skip me. It took me a minute to realize who you were talking about, but yes, because I'm terrible with names, but I'm great with faces.
Yeah, yeah, same, same.
um, as an artist, you said that you were seeking out and you used the word beauty, but where in your work have you pursued ugly?
Ooh, interesting, interesting. Well, well, let me ask you this, and I guess I'm supposed to ask the question or answer the question, but what are we defining as ugly?
The same
Because
thing that you decide describe as beauty.
uh,
It belongs to you,
hmm,
because duality within art, duality within life is important in order to completely be self or an artist. So you tell me what's ugly.
very good question. Very good question. I'm gonna marinate on that for a second. Give me a
Yeah, we
moment
can come
to
back.
really process. No, 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 no. I'm gonna answer it now. I'm gonna answer it now. I just want to think about it
Yeah.
for a moment because that's I want to give it the the
Have you
response.
figured out what beauty is? Maybe even if you don't have an answer, that's okay. Because I mean, you can't if you don't know what beauty is yet. You know, have you decided what beauty is for you yet?
So I'm gonna answer both questions, and I'll start with the beauty one, and then I'll work backwards to
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote ugly. Um, but what I've come to realize is, to me, beauty is anything that gives me cause for pause to be present in a moment and take in whatever that thing is that's like, oh wow, like this is awe inspiring, this is something that I can't stop looking at.
Mm-hmm.
uh
But
and
can't you do that with ugly?
we're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it. So because
Okay.
I find myself even with the quote unquote ugly,
Yeah.
uh, it's still something that I can't stop looking at. It's something that gives you
Provokes an
cause for
emotion.
pause. Yes, like
Yeah.
all these things. So they are. You talk about the duality of things, and like they are. You can't have the darkness without the light, and vice versa. And there is something to that. But I feel like when I am in a moment and I am fully present, whether it's a beetle crawling up the bark of a tree while I'm taking a walk, or whether I'm at Wegmans, the grocery store, and I see a woman that is like she might just not have even gotten dressed to go to the grocery store, but there's like a beauty there. And I've even seen this in like sometimes I'll be out and I'll see a woman that is clearly in her 60s or 70s, and there's just like a glow in the eye, and it's just like, wow, I would love to photograph her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's it's this those moments time and time again, and it doesn't have to be even centered on a living thing. It can be inanimate objects. It's like certain things that just bring me into the moment to where I'm not thinking about whatever thing that was preoccupying my mind. It's like beauty is something that is bringing me present, and making me aware of the things that, like you said, cause an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm thinking about, and I keep saying quote unquote ugly, because I did you see? And the only reason why I even saw this is because I had no interest in seeing it, because I think the book is way better than anything a movie can do. The Color Purple. Did you see that movie?
The most recent one?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
See, okay, so it's funny. Like that's what I would have said, but I went home with the family and everybody for Christmas on Christmas night wanted to go see it, so I wasn't just gonna be sitting at home by myself.
I
So
feel
I
you.
said, I said, all
Sometimes you
right,
got
I'll
to
go.
take a bullet for.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you see the original movie? And this is about to be a
Absolutely, 10 times over.
so this is about to be a bit of a spoiler alert for anybody who hadn't seen the original, and for anybody who has hadn't seen the most recent one. But it's not a big spoiler. It's not really that significant, but it's significant to what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
In the original movie, Suge Avery, when she meets or sees Celie for the first time, she's like, "Show is ugly." Like she has that line. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the movie, the most recent one that came out, they stuck. I mean, it was a musical, so they changed up quite a bit. But a lot of the key scenes that took place in the original film directed by Steven Spielberg,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they kept a lot of those like one-liners and those like iconic quotes.
Yeah.
Well, in this scene where Suge Avery, played by Taraji P. Henson, she kind of comes to her senses and sees Celie, played by Fantasia, and she says all of the lines, but they don't have her say "show is ugly." Like they actually cut. They didn't have that in the actual film, and I thought that was an interesting choice. But I also understand why they may not have wanted to continue that whole
Well,
thing
let's
of
break
like,
it down. Why do you think they don't want to?
okay, so I feel if and I'm speculating. I haven't seen any interviews or commentary on this, but my speculation is they they probably wanted to stray away from um black women tearing other black women down by saying kind of things like that to each
I think
other.
that's bullshit.
Okay.
I feel like
Okay.
that's
Okay.
bullshit.
Well, I'd love to hear your take on it. What do you think?
I feel like this is another way for people to hide the reality of the world that we live in.
Okay. How so?
Because you're not going to say behind closed doors that she, he, they, whoever is ugly, but then because you're in front of a camera and for the sake of people's feelings, you're going to tamper with art in order not to
Mm-hmm.
hurt someone's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Ugly exists. And in this world, it very much exists. And when you pretend like ugly doesn't exist, that's when you have situations where things happen behind closed doors. And not to go to an extreme, but saying that something isn't ugly when it is or when it's meant to be is just pulling the wool over our eyes. And that's how we get back to the scenario of where we were veiled and blind when we walked into 2020, not being grounded and connected to self.
so I like the way that you broke that down, and this is actually the conversation that we were having in the car ride back, because this was something that I pointed out to everybody. I was like, it's very interesting that they decided not to say that word, or to call, for Taraji to call her ugly. And I actually had the same sentiment of it doesn't matter what the reason was for why they left it out. Like they are tampering with art when they do those type of things. Like it's almost the same thing as banning books. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
It's the
So
same thing as hiding those demonic paintings from the museum because they're not pretty enough.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like there it was a dark renaissance for a reason. We need both to realize that evil and ugliness and death and sadness and pain and brutality exists.
So
Not so much just ugly is expansive. Ugly is a loaded clip of so many other words attached to it.
I like that you are differentiating, because I was about to say, when you started talking about brutal and all those other things, like uh they're separate things, but I agree that it's like there's degrees and a spectrum of everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's never just black or white. And I am in total agreement. Again, going back to what I said earlier about you can't appreciate the light without going through the darkness. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And I guess to further, I guess even to just take it back to your original question of, okay, well, what have I thought about, or have I explored ugly in my art. And uh, up until this point, I really haven't explored it. But with some of the stuff that I'm working on now, it is actually touching on a bit more of those darker truths that you come to, I guess, really appreciate, understand, acknowledge, all of those things the older that you get.
Yeah.
And as this year I'll be turning 42. And side note, back to the pandemic for a moment, I feel like I was robbed of like that last year of being in my 30s. Like I wasn't able to really fully enjoy that last bit of saying I was 30s, because it was like during the pandemic. And it's I was just thinking about this today. COVID-19, it started in 2019.
Yeah.
um and that was almost a half decade ago.
Yeah.
That's
And we're still
weird, right?
feeling it.
Like freaking 5 years ago, man. Like
Yeah.
this is wild to me to think
Yeah.
how fast time has gone by, and how it's seemed to be slowing down for that period of time where the world basically stopped. But anyway, now that I mean, we're in an endemic now at this point. Like that COVID ain't going nowhere. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But moving through those years, and coming through with this more evolved version of myself, um, I am now ready to explore more of those. I'll call it the darkness to the light that I had been exploring. And
Mhm.
so what people are going to start seeing, because there's a project that I'm working on now. I'm not going to get too far into it, but I will say that one of the most recent posts that I made on Instagram, it's of an image of a woman wearing a red dress, and she's holding a rose, and she's got like this rose shaped headpiece on, and then she's standing next to a rope that's been severed. I didn't go. It was actually an image that was considered one of the photos of the year for 2023 by this organization called Diversify Photo. um, I didn't go too deep into what the meaning behind some of the symbolism in that image is, but I will say here, this is an exclusive. I hadn't really shared with anybody. This is this series that I'm going to be working on, because this image is a part of a series, is exploring some of the quote unquote ugliness of life, the darkness, the not so good feelings or emotions. And I won't even call them bad emotions or bad feelings. I'm just going to call them feelings. There's just a spectrum of feelings that we have. Some of them feel good, some of them feel not so good. But sometimes I think we need to rebrand how we're labeling feelings, because we can't. And I think going back to what we were saying about not using the word ugly or banning books, uh,
Mhm.
we can't get into such a space where we want to say, like like toxic positivity that came about because people didn't want to really acknowledge like the negative emotions, if you will. uh
Yeah.
but it's like
The
those are
holding people accountable. Like
exactly.
facing yourself, like being like, this is, I'm in front of you right now. Let's talk about it. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's quite a taboo nowadays. It's well, it was then and still is. It's a process for people in general. Hopefully we can get out of it.
Yeah,
I
hopefully. But in the
because
meantime, I'm like, I am on my journey, and I'm here to recognize all of it. And one of the issues that I think a lot of us or an issue that we create for ourselves is we don't want to acknowledge or feel the negative emotions. Like we want to push past them, but what we're doing by pushing past them, or attempting to push past them or suppress them, is we are creating more issues for ourselves down the road, instead of just sitting and experiencing the feeling while you're having it. Like
yeah.
you got to sit with that stuff, man. And I'm exploring that in
But how
these.
do you? get people to consume this kind of art that makes them sit with their feelings when we're being force fed fast content, fast art, fast food, fast everything, and social media.
So it's not my job to make anybody do anything. Like if they wanna stop and take in what I've created, uh, like let them do with it what they may. But going back to what I was saying earlier about us being a vessel, I am putting the work out and it's gonna touch the people that it's meant to touch. We
Absolutely.
are in an oversaturated, heavily content driven, marketing, capitalistic, like all of these things. Like I mean, I guess it all stems from capitalism, but we are um, in this world where it's what's next, what's new, like
Mm-hmm.
what's the next big thing, what's the next news cycle, like that. For better or worse, is what it is, and we as individuals get to choose whether we're gonna be on this treadmill and like try to keep up with what's happening, or taking the opportunity to step back and live our lives on our terms. Now, granted, it's hard when we're born into the shit, if you will. Like we're
Yeah.
like fish in water. We don't sometimes we're not even clocking what's happening, but that's that's something else. I've been talking about awareness a lot. Like that's something else that I've learned from like taking a step back and even doing these going into this sensory deprivation chamber. It has caused me to become more aware of my just everyday life, and this actually reminds me of something that I like to do, and I just started doing it again at the beginning of last year. Is I would go on these sabbaticals where
Mm-hmm.
it used to be Toronto. I'd go up to Toronto and I would just unplug, no phone, no TV, no internet, and I would just sit with my thoughts. I would journal. I would take a book that would be like one of those books that would help you just kind of turn inwards, and I would read that, and I'd go for like these meditation walks in the city. And it basically the first few times I did it, it was cool, but when I decided to stop going to the city and start going into nature, it took it to a whole other level. So back in April, the most recent one I did, I found a cabin in the mountains of Pennsylvania, which just so happened to be owned by a black couple, an older black couple. So I was very thrilled to be supporting black on this journey of self discovery. But and it's called the Urban Saddle Ranch for anybody who's curious. Check them out. It's in Pennsylvania. Um, so I go up to this cabin that is secluded. It's amongst nature. This facility basically had like a farm, and there was horses, and at the time of year that I went, there wasn't a whole lot of people there, and I had my own cabin. So like I said, I was able to meditate during the day. I fasted during the day. I went on these meditation walks where I would just be very just present and aware. I was unplugged. It was so needed and illuminating. And I didn't realize how much I needed it until I went back into the real world. So on the drive back from Pennsylvania um, to Maryland, I was noticing things on this road trip because it was like 3.5 hours from where I live. I was noticing things that I didn't see on the trip coming. Like the greens were much greener. Uh,
Yeah.
the blues were just more intense. Even my dreams were more they were just more intense, more like memorable, because I was just I chose to step away and become aware. And we all have that choice to be able to do something like that if we want to unplug and stop taking the medicine that's being force fed to us.
Yeah. And
Uh,
people are actually able to do that in their own homes if they really wanted to.
Exactly, because everybody can't, go to a cabin. But
Mm-hmm.
something else on this journey, I feel like we're all over the place, but it still ties into my creativity. Um, uh, I decided to learn transcendental meditation. Are you
Mm-hmm.
familiar with transcendental meditation?
Absolutely.
So I went to a center in DC, and it's called the Transcendental uh, was it TM.org, Transcendental Meditation Organization. Like it's a specific organization where you go to learn this specific technique, where they give you a mantra that is secret. You can't say it out loud. They'll teach you how to do it, and then then you're on the path. And ever since I started transcendental meditation, when I tell you that going deeper into self in this manner is unlike anything that I have ever done or experienced. The results, the best way that I could describe them, the results are undeniable. And I can't even properly or sufficiently um communicate those results. It's a feeling, it's an understanding,
It's a
it's a
connection.
clarity, it's a connection, it's all
Yeah.
of those things. Are you do you do TM?
I do several types of meditation. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I'm very well.
So, yeah, man, like I highly recommend, even for those
Yes.
people who can't necessarily go to a cabin. I'm getting that experience twice a day, because I do it twice a day for 20 minutes each, and it's like I have to do it. Like I look forward to doing it, because it's just that beneficial to me.
Let me ask you something.
Please.
With these meditation walks, these moments and times of centering and awareness, have you ever taken your camera with you?
Oh yeah, I take my camera with me everywhere.
And when
Now,
you do that,
mhm.
what makes you click? When you're on those awareness walks, when you're centered, when you're connected, what are the things that make you click?
So, love the question. Kind of reminds me of a podcast that I once um so the things that make me click actually go back to what we were saying, or what I was saying earlier, about how I was defining beauty, the things that kind of bring me into a moment, and then I feel the urge. And it's not even really me choosing. It's like a light bulb going off, and it's like, pick up the camera,
Yeah.
pick it up. This is what it is. So, like, when I was on that ranch, and I was by myself, if I saw something that it just it just told me to pick up the camera. It's almost like when people talk about hearing from their God, whoever they worship, when they talk about hearing a voice, um, I feel like when I say the creative spirit, I feel like that creative spirit is also the same spirit that is filling everybody, the saying, "Oh, I heard from God," or
Yeah.
something told me. Like it's the same
Absolutely.
creative source. Like no matter what you believe, I feel that is what's happening, as I'm hearing from the source. And no matter how minute it might seem in the moment, nobody may ever see some of those images. Most people won't see those images that I took in those moments,
Hmm.
but it was important for a reason for me in that moment to take those photos, because I was listening to that source, that inner calling.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what would make me click in those moments, is that creative spirit guiding me and nudging me to pick up the camera. Now there is free will, and there is this idea, like I didn't have to do it. I could have just kept walking.
Yeah. And
Sometimes
just
I
kept it
do.
in your mind's eye forever.
Yeah, and that's also something that I choose to do from time to time. It's like sometimes the moment is meant to be captured in your mind's eye, so you're present for the entire thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it reminds me. I spoke about when I was in London doing the natural hair portrait series that I was working on. At the end of the day, at that particular day, I ended up photographing over 50 women um, at a studio in East London, so like a little bit outside of the main city. And the studio was situated in such a way that it had a balcony that you could go out onto. And at the end of that long shoot day, I was like, I need to take a moment.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
this
you've just looked into 50 women's eyes and downloaded.
exactly their souls, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So
you
so
see a
I
lot.
you do, like, literally. And so I was on this balcony, and the sun was setting, and the clouds were like this magnificent pink and gold. Like, it was like the perfect sunset. And I had my camera, but I was like, I'm going to just stop and just take this in. I am in London. My camera has brought me to this place. And
Yeah.
now I am just going to just take in this moment, this beautiful moment that is a gift from the source, from God, from, again, however you want to identify uh, that source. Like, I was given a gift in that moment, and
Hmm.
and I had to take it in with my mind's eye, or I chose to, because I wanted to stay as present as possible.
So when you say you listen to Source, can you go back to when you heard Source tell you to pick up your camera in 2010?
So I guess the source in this particular scenario, it was a gift. My dad and stepmom, they or my bonus mom, as I like to call her, Shantae. Shout out to Shantae. Shout out to my dad, pops. Um, uh, and she tells the story that she went, and this was back when Black Fridays were still kind of a thing, where you would on Thanksgiving night,
Yeah.
you would go out, and you'd be out there in the stores physically, and people were still getting trampled, that
You
kind
were outside trying to violate for a TV.
of exactly. This was during that time. So this is how she sets the scene: is she went out and she found a great deal on this Canon PowerShot point and shoot camera, and she got a great deal on it, and she gave that to me as a Christmas gift. Now, up to this point, we were talking about taking the image with our mind's eye. Up to this point, I've always felt like I had an eye, but I never had the tools, and I never took the time to get the tools to act on the eye, if you will.
Hmm.
I think even growing up, with three sisters, you know, before, when my parents were still married, growing up with three sisters and myself, and my parents didn't have unlimited funding, so they couldn't necessarily get me everything that I might have wanted. So I I expressed myself through written word and through spoken word poetry. Um, so that was like my way of creating early on. Now, fast forward to when I got that camera. Um, I would take it around with me everywhere, and this was just a point and shoot camera. This didn't have a detachable lens. Like, it was a built-in zoom lens, um, very like rudimentary technology. Well, I guess it wasn't really that rudimentary. Like, people could look back on it and be like, that was pretty sophisticated. But I digress. The camera itself wasn't anything particularly special,
Mm.
but I was taking it with me everywhere, and I was going on these walks, and I was doing, these things that I was talking about, that I do now to this day. But I was just really interested in creating some interesting compositions. And I don't know what it was. Again, I felt like I've always had the eye, but it was something about having this camera at this point in my life, where I was really able to explore just different things. It just awakened something in me that I didn't know was dormant. Now,
Yeah.
when it really took off, where it really clicked, if you will, pun intended, is I was invited to a friend's party. and it was like her 30th birthday, and she had a luau theme. And so she had all of the trimmings of like a luau. There was a pig on a spit, and there were leis and like all these intricate details. And so I asked her, because she was telling me about what she was planning to do. So I asked her before the party if it was okay if I brought my camera and was just like taking pictures of the party and the people or whatnot. She was like, yeah, sure, feel free. So that's what I did. I brought my camera. I was taking pictures of anything that caught my eye. And at one point during the evening, I was kind of situated in the living room area, but I had a clear line of sight to the dining room table. And around the table were these four women, and they were having a very spirited discussion, very lively, like having a good old time. You know how it is. And I was like, okay, it looks like they're having a good time over there. So I pick up my camera very discreetly. They couldn't really, they weren't paying attention to me, but because I was kind of a bit of a ways away, but I had this zoom lens, this digital zoom. And I started taking photos. And at one point, like I snapped a shot where the laughter had just begun to erupt. And when I looked down at that image, it was like it was like an epiphany. This was like one of those like definitive moments when you take a photo and you look at the image and it is telling a story.
Yeah.
It is like there is something happening here, and the viewer just can't help but wonder like what is happening. And of course you can kind of like you can fill in the blanks for yourself and create the narrative that you think is happening. And what I realized in that moment when I looked at that image and saw that story, I was like, this is what I have been trying to create with written word.
Yeah, this is the stuff that it's made out of.
Yes.
This is the moment.
This is the moment, and I didn't have to sit down for hours to freaking get it out. So I was like, this is where it's at. Like I need to be photographing people. Like
I
that's
want to do
when I
this
really
all the time.
Yes. Yes. So that was that aha moment from God, source, whomever, where it was downloaded to me that I am a vessel, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
So
And
how
then
much longer after that did this become a full-time thing for you?
so I would have to say it was a few years, because it was a whole learning process. Um it was like first of all, I started taking the images and I was very pleased, but then I started paying attention to billboards and magazines and commercials, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. Why don't my photos look like what I'm seeing in these publications, on these billboards, and these commercials? Like they don't look anything."
They look so fabricated.
Yeah. But I was upset. I was like, I want my stuff to look more polished, more, what I'm saying? Like I wanted my stuff to look like what I was seeing, because there was just like a professional grade
But was
to
it
it.
moving you the way that picture in that dining room did?
Some of them were, yes. Like even with the and this is where I'm going with it, is like being able to, because again, like when I was writing short stories, I was creating fictions. These were work of fictions, like fantasy, like my own doings, like me
Yeah.
having the control to kind of create something.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be able to create moments like that. I wanted to capture them organically, but I also wanted to create moments that
Create
told
worlds.
yes, worlds, moments, all of those. Like I wanted to do that in a way that appealed to me visually, because
Yeah.
again, I don't think we are influenced. Like there is a certain bit of nature, or I mean nurture, when it comes to like the things that we find ourselves drawn to, but then there are things that are like innately, like there is something about this that I just am innately drawn to. And when I would see these very polished, and when I say polished, I mean well lit, well composed, not overly processed, because I've always had a kind of like a disdain for images that look too cartoonish. Like when it comes to like the retouching and the fake lip
Yeah.
in, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a well composed, well lit image that is telling a story in one frame. And that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to create stories like that. And so that began a process of of being self-taught, along with finding mentors, along with just hours upon hours of doing the work, not just reading about it or watching videos about it, because I was doing that. But I found that being on the ground, being on set, assisting other photographers, getting out of my comfort zone and asking people to let me photograph them, like hours and hours. Like, what is that old boy talks about doing 10,000 hours? What's his name? But oh, Malcolm Gladwell. Um, he has this whole thing about, you do like
10,000 hours of your
and
skill in
yep,
order to be a
and like
master
or
at
a
it.
master. Yeah, and I'm still working on my 10,000 hours. Like I think if I added it up, I don't know, maybe I'm close. I don't know. I'm never going to fully master what I'm doing. I was actually just having this conversation with someone last night about, you're never going to stop learning. There's always, especially
Yeah.
with the technological advances and everything that we're seeing coming down the pipe now with, AI and just
3D rendering and
all of it, all of it. Like,
yeah, I mean, because Photoshop is getting upgrades all the time.
yep, yeah, you already know. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
what y'all done did now? Because I get a notification every time, like new
And
update
not just that,
available.
though, to go back to what you said about mentors and masters, like you never really hear a mentor or master that is a true mentor or master and great at their craft say that they are genius and perfect and they can't learn anything else, because
Exactly.
those are the ones that you need to move yourself away
Run
from.
away from. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are on the wrong path.
Yes, you can no longer help me, sir. But to go back to something you said earlier, writing with light, uh, photographs that are full of composure and that are composed and beauty within themselves. I'm going to go back to that duality, just like with beauty and ugly. Where are your images that translate wilderness, not so much composure?
Like the wild, the
Yeah,
wild aspect of life on Earth.
yeah,
Again, this is the phase where I'm at now. Like if you were to look at my body of work over, the past 14 years, um, there are glimpses of it. I have
yeah,
to there are glimpses of it, but I haven't explored it in the way that I am now ready to explore it. Because prior to that, I wasn't ready or being called to explore the ugly
yeah.
um in the ways that I am now going to be exploring it. But now you've got me wanting to go back, and
I
because I
mean,
know
that
it's
is what
there.
we do here at Atelier 1121. We push the envelope. We want you to think. We want you to dig deep, and we want you to not so much. I want you to pivot, but I encourage growth. I encourage the other side. I encourage all sorts of genres of art. Even though you're a photographer, I'm happy to hear that you did poetry. I'm happy to hear that you're reading these books. I'm happy to hear that you know, adapted nature into your reality and meditation into your life and connecting to source, because at Atelier, in this podcast, we want to hear it. We want to know. We want to grow. We're not here to stay stagnant.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished. Because now I'm like, I want to go back and look into my book of work, and I bet I would be able to identify it a bit
Because
more
the
clearly.
wilderness is there whether you want it or not.
Exactly. There's no hiding from it.
Yeah. And even with the ugly, you say you didn't pursue it, but it's there somewhere.
Let
My
me ask
next,
you this. Hold on. You're
yeah,
getting all the
yeah, yeah.
questions in now. I'm curious. Okay, how are you exploring the ugly? Let me just say this first and foremost. I meant to say this earlier, but I have been a fan of your work since we first got connected, and I don't even remember how we first connected. It had to have been in Baltimore,
Yeah.
and I've had the opportunity to pull some of your pieces and I think one of my most favorite images that feature one of your pieces is this photo that I took of a model in LA, and she's got this fro, and there's like a flow going to the piece, and there's
Mhm.
this beautiful California sunlight coming through the windows just hitting her in such
With
a
her
way.
bare feet.
Yep, that's the one. That's the one with Sarah Cooper is her name, and yeah, that's easily one of my favorite images that I've shot with one of your pieces. But I just wanted to say
Thank
that I've admired your work for some time. I've gotten to see some of the runway shows that you've produced, and then I would also get emails from you because I'm on your newsletter, and you do fragrances, and there's just all of these other ways in which you create. and
Mhm.
and now I'm getting a chance to kind of talk to you about the creative process, and having you grill me on on my process. How are you in your work? How are you exploring the ugly?
um, Shunning perfection. I not to answer so quickly, but I adapt ugly and realize that I have been so hard on myself saying this has to be perfect, this has to be perfect, when in actuality if I don't have a little bit of imperfection and a little bit of ugly in my work, I mean, what's the point?
Mm.
um Ugly, I like to distort I don't use Photoshop, I don't edit the faces of my models, I hate that. I might put a medium gloss over, but I'm not
Hmm.
going to
Hmm.
touch up your makeup or change your face. I want to see it all. When it comes to my garments, they are not perfect. Your stylist is going to have to pin it somewhere to help you translate the story that you want. I just want to make stuff, and I am okay with it not being perfect. But on my end, I'm only here to create the structure. It's your job to create the beauty. But when it comes, that also incorporates the wilderness. And some people will say, well, oh, that means your clothes aren't, well made. They actually are very high quality fabrics,
They
and they
are.
are well made. But also, I sew every single piece that anyone ever sees. Every perfume bottle, I am mixing the oils. And that's the ugly part, the hard work, the
Mm.
crying, the disconnect from source, the conversations and dialogues and topics behind the runway shows. Woman of My Dreams isn't about some frilly princess, beautiful woman. It's about the Madonna complex and whores.
Mm.
The runway show that you attended in New York, that was called Before the Death of a Child's Imagination. This was about digging deep into the fact that, the world isn't as beautiful and as great as it seems, but you're going to have to take what you have and make what you can with it, you
Mm.
know?
Mm. You
And it
speaking
went,
truth.
it comes to my photography. I'm not the best photographer in the world, but there's a story somewhere that I see in my dreams clearly that was given to me that I'm just trying to get down on quote unquote paper.
I love it.
And thankfully enough, I've been able to create some beautiful images with that because I love photography and I love photographers, but no one can do my editorials like I can.
I love it. I love it.
And that's not cocky, ladies and gentlemen. That is Ontavia.
Listen, no, that's real. Like I'm
Yeah.
I totally feel you on that. When you can identify, like sometimes I'll create something, and then I'll be like, I don't care. I don't care what you say. Like, this is dope. It don't matter. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care what your opinion, what your critique is. And I do take critiques from specific people. Um but there are just times when when it hits in a certain way, and that certain way doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be technically accurate. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel you, man. I feel you.
And when
Gotta
it
go with that.
comes to the beauty part of the fashion and the fragrances and the books, And the videos and the productions, it's all about movement, and not just, the movement of the fabric or the movement of the models. Because I say, hey, try to walk like this, and we'll go over the walk a million times until she gets it right. I want people to feel things, but also when a woman is walking down the street, I want you to see the woman first, and then the halo of clothes that float around her. And if you haven't been to, like, people who haven't been to my shows, it's almost like the clothes are like liquid, and it's not easy to get them there.
You are exactly right. When I think back to what I've seen, I'm like, it is very fluid, very liquidy, if that is just to make up a word.
But yeah, that's where we are. But back to you. Tell me about the DMV fashion community and photography community and what they have done for you.
That's an interesting question, because a lot of the fashion that I do end up shooting is either in New York or LA. I do have what I like to call a couple of muses that I work with here in the DMV that really inspire me. And sometimes that can be a challenge in this area of, in between DC and Baltimore and Virginia. Like, there's just, it's like the talent is here, but sometimes it's not as readily available to, or it's easy to find as in the fashion capital of the world, New York City, or the entertainment industry of the capital of the world in Hollywood. It's like it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel in those cities, because it's just everywhere, but it's not as concentrated in the DMV area. So it's I'm a bit more selective and strategic about who I'm working with in this area. But as of late, I have been involved, as actually just recently, back in August. There's this event, and this is only the second time that it's happened, but they call it the Baltimore Met Gala. And it ended up, the first one they did ended up being like a viral success. They had a lot of videos go viral on Instagram and TikTok because of some of the pieces that were being highlighted from some Baltimore designers, some really dope Baltimore designers. And so that happened. And then this year I actually pitched, because I shoot for this magazine called Be More Art Journal. And I've been working with them since the inception of the magazine. And when I saw that they were going to be doing the Baltimore Met Gala again, I had an idea, because normally what they do in those situations is you'll see a lot of the photos from the runway, and they'll get some really dope shots of the models walking the runway. But I wanted to take some fashion portraits of the models. So I had this idea of reaching out to one of the coordinators and seeing if they would be open to having me basically build a studio in the like in the back where all the models are, and selecting a few of the models before or after they hit the runway to do fashion portraits. And then I pitched to the photo editor, or the magazine editor, Kara Ober. I'm like, hey, and I sent her a pitch deck, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, this Baltimore Met Gala has been picking up some steam, and I want to create some really dope images that will look great in our magazine. And so she was on board, the coordinators were on board, and that's basically what ended up happening. And we created some magnificent, and this goes back to what you were saying about nobody can shoot your work like you can shoot it, or nobody can shoot an editorial for your pieces like you can. Well, these images were like unequivocally amazing, beautiful, striking, iconic, all of these things. And I'm not saying them because I shot them. Like, this is just
toot that horn.
Yes, like this is just what happened. And it's not even just my horn. I'm talking about the talent of the designers, the hairstylists, the makeup artists, the models themselves. Everybody came with it. And I was I brought this up because last night they had the reveal for this year's Met Gala. So they threw a big event at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum or in Baltimore. They had a big event last night, and they invited me to come and speak on a panel during this event to just talk about my experience. And it was funny being on this panel last night and describing to them what I just described to you about everything that happened and how it came to be. And to think about how I haven't been as involved in the fashion community in the DMV because of my travels and going to different places to do those shoots. But I have connected with a community who I can see myself like continuing to build with, because it's slept on. I feel like Baltimore is slept on in
Very
so
much.
many ways. So many
Very
ways.
much.
I feel like it should have, when you think about like the Harlem Renaissance, like
Yeah.
I don't understand how Baltimore has never really been on the map for its art scene. Like there'll be some onesie twosies and some people coming out here and there, but the amount of talent
Yeah.
that is in this city across the board on the creative, like in the creative realm, is like I don't know why, and I get it. The Wire came out and like it became notorious for some of the ugliness, if you will, the darkness that
Yeah.
comes with any major city, by the way, not just Baltimore.
But for some reason, it's more illuminated there and not looking at the beauty of that city. That city is very beautiful.
It is. And by the way, my first experience with Baltimore was in 1998. I came to DC on a 4-H trip. And we spent a day in the National Harbor, or not the National Harbor, at the Baltimore Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And from the moment we crossed the Baltimore city limits and we hit that downtown area, and even we had to go through some of the less savory parts of Baltimore that you might have seen like on The Wire. And I was just like, this city has so much character. I was drawn to it in such a way that experience I still look back on with fondness, because it was like, man, we were like that was my first time in Baltimore, and I was with a great group of people, and we just had a great time, and I could see and feel the character of the city. So anyway,
it's very rich. It's
very
very
rich. And
the
go ahead,
Black community is so, I want to use the word potent. It's beautiful. It has it's dark, but when the sun comes out, it's undeniable.
It is undeniable, and it's unfathomable to me that it hasn't actually had a renaissance on the level or above the level of what happened in Harlem,
because
all of
it's
those
so
years ago.
foreshadowed by the existence of Washington D.C. and it's a hop, skipping, and jumping away
That's
from
true.
New York.
That's true. I could see that.
People say, why settle when you can just go to the ladder? And that's unfortunate. Because
very unfortunate.
Sometimes the city suffers because of it, but it is a beautiful existence. I lived there for 3 years, and it wasn't perfect, but I saw it for what it was.
Wait, so I met you in Baltimore, but I guess I just assumed you were from the area. Where are you from originally?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland. Okay. Bone Thugs.
I've lived a little bit of everywhere, coast to coast.
Yeah. Cleveland is the city where we come from, so run.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
East 99, baby. No.
No, don't say no. Yeah.
Listen, I didn't know nothing about it. I was a little boy in Alabama listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony, man. I still miss my Uncle George, y'all. So no.
Tell me something. Tell me what's a common misconception about the work that you do.
Let some of my friends tell it, especially some of the male friends. They're like, man, Kelvin, you get you out here working with all these beautiful models,
women every day. My God.
I'm like, it's like I get it from the outside, and then even with some of the work that I get to do like out in LA, and some of the work that I really don't even put out that I do with celebrity, like
The
it's
Essence, the CFDA.
yep,
You was in
that
Forbes. You was at
yep.
the American Black Film
Yep, I'm
Festival.
one of the
You over
official
there
photographers
shooting
for ABFF.
Jonathan Majors. Like, yeah,
Oh,
I know.
well, so I'll put out little glimpses of it here and there, but like the extent, I don't think people really realize the extent to which like I'm out there. But and I get it. Like when you do see these posts and you see certain things, it's like, oh wow, you in the mix. And it's like, yeah, I am in the mix and it's cool, but it's not what you think. And it's not all like
glamorous,
glitz and glam and
yeah,
beautiful women. Like the amount of work that I'm doing on my laptop, from like emails to pre-production to post-production to the ins and outs of like running a business, like that the whole photo shoot aspect of it, like that's probably, I don't know, 30% if I had to throw a percentage on it. And then it's like the other stuff that is not fun. or not, I won't say it's not fun, but it's, well, okay, I will say it's not fun.
I mean, it's work.
It's work. It's work. And
people forget that this is our job.
Exactly.
Like, it's cool to go dress the Rockettes. Yes, it's great. It's great to have a Netflix series. It's great to have something on Hulu. But I work 12 to 15 hours a day.
Sometimes longer. Sometimes longer. So
I'm tired.
Tired is an understatement, but blessed as well. I'm grateful.
Yes,
I'm tired.
Extremely.
But I love it. I love it. When I'm actually on set, like that's the reminder to me that, like, man, I love doing this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like even in some of the uncomfortable or unfun moments on set, or dealing with certain talent or whatever, I'm still reminded that I'm gonna like be doing this until I can't do it physically anymore.
Amen.
You know? So yeah, like that. That's a misconception that it's all glitz and glams and beautiful people. And I'll say there is a certain level of there's a intoxication or a high that you can get from being around like beautiful people. Like it's fun. And this goes back to my appreciation of the beauty of it all. And even in the process of the beautification, because it was always funny to me in the very beginning when I would I'd be on set and then the model would come, as a blank canvas, and sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll be like, wait, that's you? You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you'll be like, whoa, wow. And then she's like, well, let me get my face on, and then then I'll be ready. And then it's like, oh yeah. So it's interesting to see how fake all of this it's really all is. Entertainment, that's it. Like, don't take it too seriously, and don't take yourself too seriously, because honestly, and some people kind of think this is kind of like a glass half empty perspective, but I do feel like none of this matters.
Like, no, you have to look at it that way.
Yes. But even in what we're creating, let's say that the earth is gonna finally get fed up with the cancer that we human beings are to it, and it decides to go it decides to go,
supernova
nuclear,
on our ass.
or whatever. And like and scorches all of us to where there is no human existence.
It's up.
It like none of this will then matter.
That like, journal you wrote in, you good.
Gone. All of it. Like, so I try to like at least one time a day or once a day, I'll try to have that thought of this doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. And that actually helps me kind of work through nerves sometimes when I've got like a big job or a big call or whatever. Like, just to remember, like, it doesn't really matter.
And not just that, the person on the other end is a human being too.
Yep. That's it.
And that goes into my next question.
Okay.
Tell me about what makes you click the podcast.
Oh, so okay. Now I'll preface this was saying that I don't record that show anymore, and there's a couple of reasons why, but I'll tell you why I started. And in the heart of the pandemic, when we were like shut down, and I think at this point had been in it for like a month or two, and I was really craving the I needed to create. I needed to do something because I couldn't pick up my camera and do what I used to do because again, we were so uncertain about what was going to happen next. And I was craving human connection. Like I wasn't
There it
able to
is.
like that it's important, man. Like I
We
want
are all human on the other end of that line.
that's right. And that's why I started the podcast. It's like I want to talk to some of these photographers who are out here doing some amazing things, and had a story to share, but also a perspective and experience and lessons that they could bestow upon any listener who decided to click play on the podcast. And I titled it "What Makes You Click" as a kind of a play on the whole like what makes you tick as a human being. And I wanted to know what made these individuals click as creatives, as photographers. And so the show was an exploration of each individual guest, like their upbringing, their psychology, like what were some of the experiences that they had growing up, and then we would get into how that impacted their creativity and how that showed up or presented itself in their work. So I thoroughly enjoyed those recordings. I will say that I am an introvert by nature. Like I need alone time, and I recharge when I am away from people. And so it did get a bit taxing, and it was on me because I didn't necessarily build a team. Like I should have built a team. I did have somebody to edit the podcast, and I had some people to do like the transcribing, but I needed more help in
Yeah.
order to keep that production going. I mean, you know what it is.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for how many seasons now? 7, 8,
7.
7. Yeah. So you know the work that goes into it. And then I'm also I am a bit of a perfectionist. So I wanted it to sound as good as it could sound. And I wanted to present it in a way that was like, okay, this is on the level. And I mean, you get it. You know how it is. Like you really
Yeah.
want to like make it something great. And I was doing the most. And then as some of the restrictions started to loosen up, and after the George Floyd murder, the weirdest thing happened where people started deciding they needed to diversify their creative staffs, and I started getting some really amazing jobs, some gigs working with some major networks, some heavy hitters in the game, and I started getting booked more. So it's like between like that and life and not having a team, like I ended up not continuing the podcast, but it is evergreen. Like the episodes are still up. And if you are a creative in any regard, but if you are specifically a photographer, like I recommend listening to every episode because these these creatives that joined me for these conversations, they had so many gems to drop. Like you will be able to fast forward your your evolution as a creative by listening to some of the struggles and learning from um, some of their pitfalls, if you will, and some of their their wins. Like I think it's just like another way. Like they become your mentors in those episodes. So I still highly recommend that people go check it out. It's what makes you click with Kelvin Bulluck, and you can find that wherever you listen to your podcast.
I just want to say this. If you never pick up another episode of the podcast, your book with that podcast and the people that you have spoke to and helped exists in this world. And it will be there forever until the internet does not exist.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
if you never pick it up, it's there. You did the work. So don't ever forget that.
until the earth disintegrates and it
Yeah,
doesn't matter anymore.
before it's up for all us bitches, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Can I ask you a question?
I mean,
What
yeah, this is what I'm
was
here for.
the the image? What was the photo that was taken that you've seen in your life that wasn't yours that completely moved you, even if it moved you to tears? Who was it by, and where did you see it?
You know, the image that comes to my mind is actually a painting. It's not actually a photo. It is a piece titled "The Bark of Dante," and that's Barque, "The Bark of Dante," which is a painting from the Romantic era um, by an artist who is called I want to say it correctly, and it's because it's a French name. It's um, Eugene Delacroix. Or Eugene, or it looks like Eugene Delacroix if you're from the South, like I am, but Eugene Delacroix. He painted this piece that is a depiction from the story of like Dante's Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And in this piece, Dante is on a boat trying to escape Hades, and there are a bunch of souls trying to latch on to the boat to get away from hell or from Hades.
Yeah,
And
it's beautiful.
yeah, man, like it to
The
me,
reds, that crimson
yes,
blue,
yes,
the
like
agony and desperation in the faces in the water.
it's
There's a
like
man biting at the boat.
yes, yes. It is so detailed, so thorough, it's so tragic, so beautiful, like all the things we've really been talking about.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the
it,
ugly, it's the
yes,
weirdness, it's the pain, it's the duality.
it's the duality. There's like, but there's still a beauty to it. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's and that I feel like when you look at some of the photographers who are like world renowned, like when you think about like an Annie Leibovitz or I'm trying to think of some of the other people who kind of do images that kind of feel like this. They are pulling inspiration from these paintings from like back in the day, because there's like the lighting is so it's so dramatic, but it's
Yeah.
even, and it's like I strive for some of the work that I do. I like to create a lighting that is similar to that.
It's
And
almost like you can see that hell and darkness is behind them, but the light is in front of them.
yes,
Without seeing the sun, without seeing where they're going, you know it's better where they're going.
mm.
It's
Or is it?
beautiful.
Is it though? It's like sometimes you don't know.
But
So
shit, are they going to even make it there?
are they? Look at those souls, man. I don't know if they're gonna let them. So I have to go back and actually read the Dante's Inferno to get the outcome of that. But I'm pretty sure it ended up well for him, or maybe it didn't. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. I will have to do some fact checking on that.
It's
But
dope.
yeah, that's to answer your question is an image that comes to my mind that is
Thank you for
how.
gifting me that picture because I've never seen it before.
Oh wow. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I love like having conversations with people,
Yeah.
and learning and growing. Like even you know, grilling me about the ugliness, and now me going having to go back and like look at my own work. Like I never even thought about that. So it's like we're growing from having this conversation.
Yeah, but you
And by
love ugliness and you love the dark, clearly,
yeah,
because this
I guess
image
so.
just told me.
I
It
guess
exists
so.
within you. You're just searching for it. Even
Yeah.
though you're not searching for it to be implemented into your life, you're searching for it because you know it exists. And why not be prepared to know it exists so that you can protect yourself with the light?
Exactly. Beautifully
Oh,
said. Beautifully said.
so we're down to our last few questions. What can we expect from you in the future? I know you mentioned something coming up earlier within the podcast, but is there anything else you would like to share with us? Something special coming up?
So yeah, that series is definitely near and dear to my heart. I've got a few shoots lined up geared specifically towards that, and I am going to be like releasing them as like fine art portraits that I'll be doing in limited um prints. So like they're gonna be like I'm planning to do a whole like exhibition and selling these prints for what they're worth. So this is not gonna be, you know, it's not going to be one of those. It's not going to be a discount buy, if you will. It's going to be something that
Get
I'm gonna put it.
paid, little. Get
Yeah,
paid.
but and that's not necessarily why I'm doing it. But I feel like if I am going to be selling it, I'm going to sell it for what it's worth.
Yeah, amen.
So
Amen to that.
that's something that I'm looking forward to that is coming down the pipe. What else? For the past 2 years, I have really redefined what I consider success and what I consider worthy of placing as a goal. Like
Yeah.
in the past, it was really a lot about the things that I was told would bring me happiness and greatness. The money and the notoriety and the fame and yada yada yada. None of that really matters, and I'm at the age now where I'm like I could care less. And so for me, I am defining success um, in so much as if I'm able to create what I want to create with who I want to create it with, that's a win. If I'm able, that's success. If I'm able to help when I can help, that and however that looks, whatever that looks like, that is success. And if I'm able to like travel and create experiences, not amass things, but amass experiences, like that is success.
Yeah.
So these are the things that I'm really focusing on. And it's very broad when I say it like that, but it's so simple. Like when I'm faced with a choice of doing one thing over another, like I'm now asking questions like, am I going to enjoy this? Am I going to enjoy the people that I'm doing it with? Am I going
Does
to have
this
a
reflect
story to
who I
tell?
am?
All of it, all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Am I going to have a story to tell? Is it going to reflect who I am? Like these are the questions that I'm asking before, making a decision. And because I've been using that as a gauge, this past, like even last year, 2023 was an amazing year. I had so many great experiences and had so many great conversations. Um, Times that I'm going to look back on that are going to live rent free in my head for as long as I can remember them. Like,
Yeah.
and I was able to have those experiences because I didn't necessarily set like a financial goal. Like all goals are great to have, and set them in whatever way you want to. But for me in this season in my life, I'm like that's I'm not looking at it from a capitalistic mindset, if
Yeah.
you will.
Yes.
So
I understand that 100%.
yeah, man.
Before I get to my last question, I just want to let you know that here on Atelier 1121, we love to have artists on to let them know that we appreciate you, we see you, we love what you're doing, and we would like to encourage you to never stop. But if you do, we want to let you know that we've loved what you've done thus far. Thank you
Aww.
so much for coming on Atelier 1121. And I can't wait to see what's next. I hope to work with you again in the future.
Most definitely.
And the most important question and the last question here is, where can we see your work? How can we follow you? How can we support? And what are your social media handles?
Well, first, thank you for those flowers. I received that. I am grateful. I appreciate it, and it never feels bad to hear someone say that they received your work in a in a way that touched them. And so I appreciate you for acknowledging me and even having me on today. Like this has been a great conversation. We've almost been at it for 2 hours now, and the time has flown. I knew we were gonna have a good call.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been wanting to connect with you anyway. We still got to get together and do lunch or coffee. in New York and, catch up face to face. So,
Absolutely.
but to answer your question, I can be found on Instagram at KelbyPics. That's KelbPics, KelbyPics. And you can find my website at kelbypics.com. And normally I'm posting what's happening on Instagram. That's where you can find my most up-to-date work. But if anybody ever wants to reach out directly, you can always shoot me an email at kelbypics@gmail.com.
Thank you, Kelvin, for coming on Atelier 1121.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are listening this far, thank you for listening to the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something away from this podcast episode. Also, if you are an artist or you know an artist that would be amazing on Atelier 1121 podcast, please don't hesitate to email me at rouletteont@gmail.com. That's ROULETTEONT@gmail.com. Have a good night.